Some things start off wrong and end up becoming a miracle, but in between, there's hell. Everything was set for Dr. Gustavo to spend that weekend in absolute silence. The countryside house was his grandmother's inheritance, recently renovated. With no neighbors nearby and an iron gate that barely opened, no one had been there for months. It was the perfect hideout for a millionaire tired of his own fame and his own mistakes. "No one's gonna find me here, not even myself," he said, laughing, throwing his leather backpack on the dusty living room floor. Outside, the sky looked like burnt oil, heavy, dense, suffocating. Inside, it smelled like old wood, mold, and abandonment. He flipped the switch. Nothing. Tried again. Just dry clicks. He sighed. Great. No power. Just like my marriage. He tossed his blazer on the couch and opened a bottle of wine straight into his mouth. Like someone trying more to forget than to remember. Gustavo wasn't just rich. He was broken inside. No one reaches the top without leaving a few ribs of their soul along the way. But the silence in that house wasn't complete. It was the kind of silence that breathed as if someone else was there at night. Already lying on the makeshift mattress in the living room, the sound came. A sharp, wet, shrill noise, a cry, a baby's cry. He sat up immediately, sweating. It was a dream, right? The cry came again, clearer now, more real, from upstairs. His spine stiffened. He stood slowly, picked up the table lamp like a weapon, step by step. Holding his breath, he climbed at the door to his grandmother's room. The sound was louder. Gustavo opened it, and what he saw inside made his world stop. Covered with an old sheet, lying in a corner, a woman, filthy with a baby in her arms. Her eyes were desperate, mixed with anger, like a cornered animal. "Get out. He's sick. Get out." The baby cried in hunger. She trembled in fear, and the millionaire trembled in disbelief. A house that was supposed to be empty was full of secrets. Asterisk. "Look, lady, I don't want any trouble, okay? But this house is mine." Gustavo's voice was firm, but his heart was pounding in his throat, because let's face it, you arrive at an abandoned house, think you're alone, and suddenly there's a woman with a baby in her arms sleeping on your floor. That's not a movie, that's real life. And in real life, when something's too surreal, it's either a scam or a punishment. The woman clutched the baby to her chest like he was the only thing left in the world that mattered. "I just need 2 days, just 2 days, please." Her clothes were torn, her hair tangled, and her eyes said more than her mouth. It was fear, hunger, a kind of pain that doesn't come from bruises. It comes from life, and living outside society hurts more than cold. "Ma'am, how did you get in here?" She didn't answer, just stayed silent, rocking the baby to see if he would stop crying. Gustavo took a step back, thought about calling the police, but froze. He didn't even know her name, and he didn't know why, but he felt sorry in his mind. A phrase from his grandmother came back. "If you only look with your eyes, you don't see. You have to look with your heart." He took a deep breath. "All right, you have 1 night, just one. Tomorrow morning we talk, and you leave." She nodded, without thanking him, just turned to the side and covered the baby with a dirty cloth. But Gustavo didn't sleep. He sat on the stairs, listening to that muffled crying, that broken breathing, and trying to understand. Who was she, and why was she in his grandmother's house? The next day, before the sun even woke up, the woman was already in the kitchen, messing with the stove, like she owned the place. Hey, you said you were leaving." She looked at him calmly. "I said I needed 2 days. And what happens on the 3rd? You vanish into thin air." She lowered her eyes, and for the first time, she answered, "On the 3rd day, I buried my son." Gustavo went silent. A chill ran through him like time had frozen. "What do you mean, bury?" She didn't explain. Just kept rocking the baby. And at that moment, Gustavo realized something. That baby was cold and wasn't crying anymore. The silence that followed those words was heavy, heavier than a coffin. Gustavo approached slowly. The baby was wrapped in a dirty cloth, eyes closed, skin pale, cold to cold. "Ma'am, he died." She didn't answer, just hugged the tiny body against her chest, like she was trying to stop time from taking him, like she still hoped to bargain with God, but her silence screamed. Gustavo stepped back, not knowing whether to cry, scream, or run. "For God's sake, tell me what's going on here." Who are you? Why are you here with a dead baby? That's when she stood, with a strength that didn't seem to come from her, and spoke firmly. He's not dead. He's sleeping. He just sleeps differently. That sentence made no sense, but her gaze seemed to believe in her own lie. Doc Gustavo pulled out his phone. He was going to call the police, the paramedics, someone, anyone. But again, he froze, because he looked at that baby, and for a second, just a second, he swore he saw the little chest moving, faintly, but moving. Wait, he's breathing. She nodded, a tear falling from the corner of her eye. You're the first to believe. No one else believes. They said he died during birth. But I know. I feel he's still here. Still here. Gustavo sat down in the chair like the world had collapsed on him because, see, he wasn't a man easy to fool. He'd fallen for partner scams, blackmail from an ex-wife, every trap life throws. But that woman didn't seem like an actress. She seemed like a mother. What's your name? She hesitated. Livia. And his name. Her voice broke halfway. Isaac. Gustavo swallowed hard. Isaac was the name of the son he lost in a miscarriage 4 years ago. Coincidence or punishment? But before he could say anything else, a low sound filled the kitchen, a sound that made his heart stop. The baby had coughed. Gustavo was frozen, his eyes wide, his whole body on alert, like time had stopped around him. Because it wasn't a hallucination, it wasn't an echo. The baby coughed. Did you hear that? He asked, barely breathing. Livia held the baby tightly, like it was the sign she'd been waiting for days, months, maybe since birth. I told you. He's here. He just needs time. Gustavo knelt beside her, moved closer to the tiny body, put his face close, and he heard it, a faint breath, but steady, like a breeze at sunset. Almost gone, but alive. My God, he really is breathing. Livia began to cry, a silent, painful cry that seemed to come from her very soul. It wasn't relief. It was built-up despair. They said he was stillborn, that there was nothing to be done, and they took him from me, gave me 2 hours with him. But I knew. I felt it. A mother knows. He wasn't gone yet. Gustavo didn't understand anything. But one thing he knew, the woman in front of him wasn't crazy. She was broken, torn apart by life, but not insane. Who's they? Where did this happen? She hesitated. At Sao Giraldo Maternity, the hospital for the rich. They kicked me out of there. Said a woman like me didn't even have a place to die. That I was hallucinating and left me with the body. I ran with him. No one listened to me. Only you. Gustavo felt a weight in his chest. He knew that hospital. He had funded renovations there years ago. He was one of the biggest investors. It was his, indirectly. And now, he was being accused of silencing a mother. My God, what did they do to you? Livia looked him in the eyes. The same thing the world does to those without a fancy last name. Discard them. That sentence cut like a knife. Doc Gustavo stood up, grabbed his phone. I'm calling an ambulance. He needs help now. But Livia screamed, no, if he goes back there, they'll finish what they started. They don't want anyone to know. Who are they? Livia. She whispered, the doctor, the director, and the man with the burgundy tie. They lied on the records, threatened me to keep quiet. The phone trembled in Gustavo's hand, because the man with the burgundy tie was him. Gustavo felt the ground collapse beneath his feet. She had said it clearly, the man with the burgundy tie. He wore that tie the day they inaugurated the neonatal wing. There were photos, videos, press coverage, and more than that. He was the main donor of that hospital. Gustavo Aurelio Montenegro. The realization hit like a hammer. They hid this from me. Livia looked at him with rage. Hid? Or did you just pretend not to see? People like you sign checks but don't open their eyes. That hurt more than he wanted to admit. But the truth was, Gustavo had never heard of any scandal. In the bubble he lived in, reports were clean. Numbers were smiling. Problems were solved before they hit the news. Now he understood. It was all designed so he wouldn't know. But now there was a woman in front of him with a baby alive, that the world swore was dead, and that world had his fingerprints on it. He went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on his face, stared in the mirror like trying to recognize himself again, and he asked out loud, "What do I do, Grandma?" In his mind, His grandmother's voice echoed. If one day the world shows you a wound, boy, don't cover it up. Apply medicine, even if it burns. He returned to the kitchen. Livia was still there, huddled with Isaac, like a cornered animal, ready to die fighting. All right, I believe you. But if this boy has a chance, we need real help. She lifted her eyes slowly. I'll only go with you if you promise he'll live, that they won't take him from me. Gustavo swallowed hard. I don't promise what I can't deliver, but I promise you one thing. Now you've got a big name on your side, and I won't let them erase yours. She hesitated, then nodded, with a faint thread of hope. That's when the baby coughed again, stronger, almost like a cry. And they both knew. The battle began right there. They left the country house nearly in the dark, with the baby wrapped in an old blanket and their breath held. Gustavo drove like he was carrying dynamite. Every turn felt like a risk. Every traffic light, a threat. Livia held Isaac like the whole world was trying to take him, and maybe it was. Are you sure you want to go to that private hospital? She asked. They have people everywhere. No, we're not going there. We're going to a public hospital, one where no one knows I set foot, a place where they don't have reach, and after that, we handle the rest. She nodded, her eyes glued to the baby. On the radio, an old, almost prophetic song played. There's an angel flying in this place. Gustavo turned it off. He didn't want distractions. They arrived at the hospital at 3:47 a.m., empty emergency room, sleepy doctor, tired nurses. But when they opened the blanket and saw the baby, chaos broke out. This baby is in critical condition. I see you now, ma'am. What happened? How long has he been like this? Livia tried to explain, between sobs and broken sentences. They said he was born dead, but he's alive. I knew it. I knew it. Doctors rushed. Nurses pushed stretchers, connected wires, opened IV lines. Gustavo stood still, watching. It all like he was on trial. When he turned around, he saw two men enter, dark suits, discreet ties, faces of people who came to retrieve something or someone. Mr. Gustavo Montenegro? He froze. Who are you? Internal security from Sao Geraldo Hospital. We came under orders from the board. This isn't Sao Geraldo, but the case is, and they pulled out a document. This child was declared deceased. A death certificate already exists, and there's a preventive warrant for removal due to attempted concealment of a corpse. Gustavo exploded. Concealment of what? He's alive, you bastards. But the men were already surrounding Livia. Mom, we need you too. Come with us. Livia screamed. Gustavo stepped in front of her, and in that instant, the baby cried, loud, strong, alive, and the entire hospital stopped to listen. The cry echoed through the walls like a sacred thunder. The baby, the one with the death certificate, was alive and crying for all to hear. Doctors ran out of rooms. Nurses froze mid-hallway. A security guard at the entrance dropped his radio, and the two men in suits turned pale. Gustavo pointed a finger at them. Did you hear that? He's alive. The attending doctor rushed over. Something's very wrong here. This baby has no rigor mortis, has vital signs. We're stabilizing him and then calling Child Protective Services. But this is serious, very serious. Livia wept on her knees, not from sadness, but from justice. Gustavo grabbed his phone, called his personal lawyer. At 4:20 a.m., I need you, now, and bring a journalist too. On the other end of the line, a sleepy voice answered, Gustavo, what absurd mess are you into now? He answered, the most sacred one of all, the truth. Meanwhile, the men from Sao Geraldo tried to retreat. We no longer need to intervene. The child is in care, and any decisions will be judicial. But Gustavo didn't let them off easy. No, you're staying. You're going to listen. Because if this woman was persecuted, if this baby was declared dead by mistake or deceit, someone will pay. And you two will be the first to answer. In that moment, their story stopped being a secret and became a public accusation. The press arrived that same morning, a young reporter, bold, with a camera in hand and a spark of outrage in her eyes. Mr. Gustavo Montenegro, is it true the baby declared dead is your son? He laughed nervously. No, but he could be. And if he were, would it matter? Livia gave her statement with a choked voice. She told of the birth, the cold doctor, the phrase she heard. He was born with no future. Better if you forget. She told how she left the hospital with a baby wrapped in a sheet, swearing to herself he was still breathing. How she slept on sidewalks, gave up everything, ran from the police, and entered that house not even knowing who it belonged to. And she cried, remembering, if he lived, I knew the world would try to kill him again. But he cried. He cried. By the end of the afternoon, the videos had gone viral. The hashtag Isaac Lives took over social media. In São Geraldo Hospital, trembled. Asters the following week, all of Brazil knew who Livia was. They knew about the baby. They knew about the lie. But what no one knew, yet, was how deep the filth behind that death certificate went. Gustavo used all his influence, sued the hospital, demanded an audit, held a press conference with independent doctors. And what came to light was worse than he imagined. There was an internal protocol called Administrative Outcome Classification. In it, cases involving mothers without social standing were labeled as discharge priority, a cold, disgusting term used to abort responsibilities the hospital didn't want to take on. That was it. If the baby had complications and the mother couldn't pay, they simplified the paperwork, closed the report, stamped death, even if there was life. Gustavo slammed the table when he heard that. They're killing with letterhead. Livia gave her testimony. The attending doctor vanished. The director was removed. And the so-called man with the burgundy tie she mentioned was the donations manager, who was selling access to beds funded with dirty money. And Isaac, the baby born with no future, breathed with the help of machines. But he breathed. He fought. He cried when he heard his mother. It was as if he knew the world had tried to give up on him, but he hadn't given up on the world. A prosecutor stated, this is a case that will change hospital protocols across the entire country, but for Livia, none of that mattered. What mattered was holding her son's hand and saying, Mommy's here, my love. No one's erasing you again. And at that moment, the entire country bowed before her. Asterisk 2. Months later, Isaac was discharged. He didn't walk. He didn't talk, but he smiled, and his smile was a slap in the face of an entire system. A silent scream that said, you failed, but I survived. Gustavo created a foundation in the boy's name, the Isaac Institute, a legal and medical support center for invisible mothers. He said it was his way of paying a debt to God and to his own past. Livia, she became a symbol of resilience, was called Miracle Mom, but she refused the labels. I'm not a miracle. I'm just a mother, and a mother fights to the end. One day, sitting on a park bench, Gustavo looked at her and asked, do you forgive me? She remained silent, then answered, looking at her son, anyone holding a living child in their arms doesn't carry hate in their heart. He smiled and understood. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't come in words. It comes through a new beginning. And the most beautiful thing happened that late afternoon. Isaac took his first step and fell straight into Gustavo's arms, as if to say, thank you for not letting me die. Gustavo cried. Livia smiled, and the world became a little less unjust that day. Some people are born invisible, but they weren't born to live erased. That was today's tale. My friend, if it touched you, leave your comment down below, hit that like button to support the channel, and subscribe, because stories like this only here from your grandpa Rico. See you next time.